Welcome everyone to today's Edison Electric Institute webinar on ATCO's Old Crow Solar Project. ATCO delivers natural gas and electricity to communities throughout Alberta and northern Canada and has worked in more than 100 countries around the world. My name is Alekia Malavarapu and I'm a senior analyst for international programs at EEI. Today we are excited to have with us Jay Massie, Vice President for Northern Development and Indigenous Relations at ATCO. We will start out with the presentation on the project and we'll take questions after the presentation. If you have any questions that come up while we're presenting or afterwards, please type them into the chat and we will get to as many as soon as we can. He will be joined in conversation by Dr. Lawrence Jones, Vice President for International Programs. I will hand this over to Lawrence to get started.
Thank you, Alekia, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon for those who are dialing in from other parts of the world, I guess. It's really an honor to have this conversation. Jay, welcome to EEI, and looking forward to your presentation and the discussion. As you all know, the Edison Electric Institute, the Innovation Award that we give every year is one that we consider to be one of the industry's sort of a most prestigious award. And we're always, looking at projects and looking at the work being done by electric companies around the world that really move the needle, both in big projects, but also in what I call small, but also pivotal and transformational projects. And this one is one that became the Edison Electric Institute's innovation finalist for the Edison Award this year. And the uniqueness of this project, which Jay is going to talk about, and why I guess the jury had their eye on, was because of not just the uniqueness of the project, but also the geographical location of the project, but also in terms of the amount of sort of a collaboration that we see. And as an industry that prides itself on emphasizing the importance of collaboration, we definitely see this as a game changer in terms of how, as we think of providing electricity to billions of people around the world, many of whom are living in rural communities, isolated communities, I think a project like this certainly sets an example for what we might want to sort of consider as a best practice for many other parts of the world. So Jay, we're delighted to have you here. You're going to now maybe give us a maybe 20 minutes presentation, and we'll look forward to the conversation with you. So welcome, Jay.
Well, thank you, and good morning. Thank you, Lawrence, and thank the Edison Institute for having me today. Quite excited to share this success story for sure. This morning here, I'm joining you from Calgary, Alberta, which is Treaty 7 territory. This is not my home. I'm from the Yukon, but I'm a guest here. But it is with gratitude that I offer my thanks to the Indigenous peoples of this place and acknowledge their vital and enduring relationship with this land. I also want to affirm the importance of meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples in my work. And I want to reaffirm my commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving my own understanding of all Indigenous peoples. I thank the elders, past, present, and the future, and I thank them for their wisdom and sharing it with me. So this morning, this presentation, just want to give you a bit of an overview of the project, what the project is, where it is. That's kind of an important part. The overall genesis of the project, some of the challenges we came across as we completed it with the community, successes that have been realized, and of course our thoughts going forward on how it can be replicated and there can be further success. So let me see if I can move my slide. And there we go. So just a little bit, just on the location of Old Crow. Obviously, this is not to scale, but the main point, the Old Crow is at the very northern tip of the Yukon. That's it up in the top left. It is north of the Arctic Circle. It is the only community in the Yukon that is fly-in only. There is no road accessibility. Every 6 to 10 years, I'd say on average for the last little while, a winter road gets built into the community, about 150 kilometers, but it's very project specific because it's quite expensive to put in. But for our project, it was a fly-in only community, quite remote, quite isolated in the north, and that was part of the big challenge for it, of course. But with that, that's a little of the location and just where to start the story of this project. And for me, this photo really captures a lot of it for me. It's one of my favorite photos. It makes its way into most of my presentations. Done by a friend of mine, Peter Mather, a photojournalist who has documented or stayed with and documented the Vuntut-Gwitchin way of life for many years now. And in this picture here, you see a typical Vuntut-Gwitchin family. And they are coming back from a successful harvest of the porcupine caribou herd. That herd, the caribou in that herd is about 150 to 200,000 animals. That herd and the Vuntut-Gwitchin have been inextricably tied together since before recorded time, for a very long time. So when I look at this picture, and I think of this activity, and even this path back to Old Crow, it has been traveled for a very long time. So for me, the Vuntut-Gwitchin, not only do they understand sustainability, they've been practicing it for a very long time. In this picture, though, you also see a typical teenager taking a picture with an iPad. So even though the Vuntut-Gwitchin are very, very much tied to their traditional way of life, they also have the modern amenities in their communities. The internet, Wi-Fi, they have a nursing station, water treatment facility, rec center, and school, of course, too. So all those facilities and all those activities need electricity, and that's what ATCO has been providing in the community for a little over 60 years now. But back to the project and its genesis and how it was brought forward. On here, it says 2013 project conceived, but I know the community was talking about it for quite a long time before that. 2013 really was the start of, I'd say, serious discussions between the Vuntut-Gwitchin and ATCO. They really wanted this project in place. They wanted their electricity to be more sustainable. To date, the power plant that we have in Old Crow is diesel-generated power plant. Like the majority of isolated communities across the north, it is diesel power there. They wanted more sustainability. They wanted a renewable project. So when they brought it forward to us, of course, there was a long list of challenges and reasons why it would be very hard to put in a large renewable project. They wanted a project that would be able to supply all the power of their community. So very, very challenging to bring a large project for that community forward, hook it into our microgrid, and keep reliability the same. That was the challenge in 2013. The other challenge you'll see in 2015, the Yukon government developed the independent power producer policy. So as we were working with the Vuntut-Gwitchin on this project, we were ahead of this IPP policy. It was being developed, being worked on at the time. What really was helpful, we had some very good collaboration with Yukon government to have input into that policy being developed to ensure that it would work for the community and for this project. As the project was refined, had system studies from the Yukon University was involved, the project design, and in 2018, we signed the electricity purchase agreement, which is the offtake arrangement, 25-year agreement that just sets the price that we are going to pay the community for their renewable electricity. 2019, construction started, and if anyone had an in-service date in 2020, we know there was this global event that threw some more complications at us. So in terms of Oak Crow, for these isolated little community, it's fly-in only. They shut down any visitors for the year, for 2020. There was no, unless you lived in the community, you were not to travel to the community. So just having so many of our technical people not from the community made it very difficult to get it done in 2020, but we've been up and running. It pushed it a year to 2021. But in the end, we have a project in place. This is it. You'll see it's right beside the airstrip. Like most isolated flying communities, the airstrip is very central to the community. The community's on both sides of it and on the banks of the Porcupine River. And it's been in operation since full operation since August of last year, 2021. But again, just on understanding what we could do and how we were going about this, really needed a new approach. And I guess it wasn't terribly hard to have a new approach for a first of its kind project. But this project really was championed by the community. It was the community that really pushed for some sustainable options for electricity. Not that we never had those thoughts before, but in a regulated environment where the economic challenges of these projects are paramount, all the dollars go into rates, it made it very difficult for us, if not impossible. So community kept pushing, and it was really what made this project work. Owned and managed locally, Vantakwichin, it's their solar field. Of course, also talked about the IPP policy that was developed. The new approach on that part was that we were involved heavily in the development of it, just to ensure that it would work with our regulated utility environment, as well as our isolated communities. Project could not have been done without Canada's support and their off-diesel initiative. Canada supported the Vantakwichin directly, and it just could not have been done without Canada's support. Resulting in reduced diesel consumption, of course, in the communities. And the big part that we are quite proud of is there was no effect on rates. So that took a while to develop that approach. Us as a regulated utility, we really wanted to, we were there to represent all customers. Yes, we wanted this project to happen. Yes, we wanted this partnership to continue with the Vantakwichin, but we had to represent all customers, and not having that effect on rates was one of our key pillars for the project. And the community was there also. they saw the benefit in that, and we got there. We got there in the end. So, quick overview of the project. 940 kilowatts of PV. You saw in the picture set up in the east-west configuration, and really that is a result. They looked at their location, so north of the Arctic Circle, very much in the summer, especially around the equinox. The sun really doesn't rise and set; it circles the sky, so you have 24-hour daylight for quite a while. So with the sun moving in that direction, their best configuration was this east-west facing. The inverter and the battery, so it's set up 940 kilowatt, but the community load is not that big. So they really sized the inverter to the size of the community, what could be the maximum. The battery size was developed to, it really needed to supply the community, the full load of the community for at least an hour. And so in the summer or in the shoulder seasons, when the solar field is the only source, it's powering the community. We designed the battery so if there was a problem with the field or the field became disconnected from the community, really the lights would stay on. And that's, of course, our big role as utility, power quality, safety, reliability. Nobody wants their lights going on and off when the sun goes down or clouds come along. So the battery was sized for that. And it has been in full production since August of last year. Ownership structures. So the community, the Vuntaq-Wichin government. I should say now, so just the term government, Vuntaq-Wichin government, there's 14 First Nations in the Yukon. 11 of the 14 have self-government agreements, final agreements that are signed with Canada and the Yukon. So they are governments. And so when we are there, we quite often interchange Vuntaq-Wichin government or Vuntaq-Wichin First Nation. They are governments, so we interchange those a bit. Anyway, their ownership is for the PV site. So the field of panels, the inverters, and that control building you just saw a picture of. That is owned and operated by the Vuntaq-Wichin. The battery system, the control system, so in the system in behind that makes sure that the microgrid stays on, a boiler, and the site interconnection, so where the PV sites connects into our distribution. That's all owned and operated by us. The project was fully contributed. So again, that will go back to the no effect on rates, fully contributed, which of course the Vuntaq-Wichin were supported by all these different arms of Canada or agencies of Canada, as well as the Yukon government. That was one of the biggest learnings and success stories, I would say, is the collaboration on all levels between us, between Vuntaq-Wichin and all levels of government. Really having everyone pulling in the same direction to get this project completed and in place. Very successful. In the 25 years, so the EPA, the offtake agreement, is a 25-year agreement. Part of it, dispatch protocol, really the mechanics behind that control system of how our power plant, our diesel power plant, interacts with the battery, which interacts with the PV site. That's a living document that is being managed by the operating committee that we established. And that's a joint committee with us and Buntuck-Wichin. Its whole goal is to ensure the reliability of the microgrid for sure, and to use as much solar energy as we can. So the pricing for electricity, fairly straightforward calculation, I'd say. So on the left, the avoided fuel costs, so the fuel costs that landed in Old Crow, put into our fuel tanks there, and it's divided by the heat rate, which is the plant efficiency. That little equation just gives you the price per kilowatt hour, your fuel divided by your plant efficiency. We add in a price for deferred maintenance and capital. So the community is paid for this. So it's designed that we are going to have, our power plant is going to run 2,000 hours a year less. So if it's going to run less, diesel engines are their maintenance and their replacements are tied to their operating hours. So if it's going to run less, it's going to need less maintenance. And there's a cost for that. There's a cost savings for that. So that is passed on to the community. And minus the additional costs. So that goes back to the slide before when we talked about a boiler. The additional costs are heating costs for us for our power plant. When these power plants were built, they are 24/7, they are running, they are built to reject heat. So the insulation isn't, the R level insulation of the building isn't as great as it could be. And diesel engines really need to be warm if they're going to run. They cannot start when they are cold. So this heating cost just keeps those units in hot standby is really what they're for. So this calculation comes out with that energy price, or the price per kilowatt hour. And then you'll see the asterisk there. It is going to be adjusted based on CPI going forward on an annual basis. So we have set the price, and for the next 25 years, it is going to increase based on that. Overall, by the numbers zone, I forgot to say at the beginning, Sri Vaya. The community name for the project, that is a Gwich'in term for sun snare. The community, again, back to their involvement, engagement for their project, they had community meetings to come up with this name, and it was well done, well put together, and they got there. Anyway, the project, it's going to offset 25% of the communities, or they're going to supply 25% of the community's electricity on an annual basis. So the community is providing their own electricity, their renewable generation, for 25% of their annual needs, which equates to, or going to offset about 190,000 liters of fuel. It is a great source of pride for the community. I think it's a big win, of course, with the GHG reductions, but also on that 190,000 liters, like, not only is it not consumed in our engines, but that's 190,000 liters that is no longer trucked up to the Yukon. It's driven up thousands of kilometers up onto the Dempster Highway, where it's loaded onto a plane and flown into Old Crow. So there is 190,000 liters of less risk is how I think of it too. That's a big benefit that's really not quantifiable, but it's a big benefit. And it has resulted in the diesel reduction. So here's a snapshot from this last June. Our power plant was sitting quiet for 17 and a half hours while the lights were still on. It's been off in the past, but the lights were off. The community was supplied on that day from their solar field, renewable electricity, 17 and a half hours. So you can imagine in behind all those, the fancy graph there, the grid control system, that control system that has to coordinate our power plant with a battery, with a solar field, with customer load, it's an ongoing learning for sure, but it's worked well. Challenges along the way. Well, we're the jurisdiction's fully regulated. We're cost of service regulation. We have yet to be before our utility board to look at the regulatory treatment. That being said, with a seat at the table for the IPP policy development, as well as working closely with government on some of the hurdles that we are going to face on the regulatory side of this project, has given us some comfort. So Yukon government also gave direction to the utility board on how costs can be treated by the utilities for these projects. The big issue with it is they only have the economic consideration when they look at our costs. There is no environmental considerations for the Yukon Utility Board yet. But we'll see how it goes. Of course, the IPP policy, developing that at the same time as this project was in flight was a bit of a challenge. Logistics of the fly-in only community. You have to have everything you need for big projects when you go in there. The community is 250 to 300 people. There's no hardware store. If you forgot a box of screws, you're gonna be waiting for the next plane. So just the coordination and logistics to get everything into the community is quite a big challenge for the team. Of course, in service date in 2020 was a big shift and a big challenge, and the new technology. So first of its kind project in an isolated community in Canada's Arctic really has its challenges when you are learning a new system and integrating it into your existing system. There's still learnings happening. I can tell you that. And of course, a new way to operate our system, just the coordinating with another large source like that in these small grids is a challenge. On the success side, community engagement, we've had a great open dialogue with the community. I'll say the one impressive part for me on the community, their energy literacy has grown exponentially. They are quite engaged on that front, eager to learn more. This project, renewable project, is 25% of their annual needs. They're looking at what else they can do. They're looking at phase twos. They're looking at wind, maybe to increase from 25%. How much higher can they go? That's been exciting to see. Of course, the diesel reduction, our continued partnership with the Wundagwitchin First Nation. We've been there for a long time. We've had a close working relationship for a long time, and this really is a true collaborative partnership that we're quite proud of. And with collaboration with governments, both the Yukon government and Canada, as the funders, we're looking at these projects. we really, we had to step up and ensure that they understood exactly how it was going to integrate, how things were going to work from our perspective, so they got that comfort moving forward with it. Capacity building, not only the community, the communities in they have full control on their side, but just for our group, we've for ATCO, we've learned a lot on this, and we're looking forward to the continuation of learning as we go. Regulatory certainty across the Yukon. So there's 3 other isolated communities in the Yukon. We have EPAs in place for them. Their projects are, 2 communities are fully designed. The 3rd community is just buttoning up their design. The funding is in place, and those projects in those communities, very similar, a high penetration where they're going to be able to supply their community with 100% renewable. Those projects will be in service in the next year and the year after. And the other big part for me, the exciting part, that blueprint for renewable projects in the north. I say the north, that's really a lot of my focus, but it's not just the north. There's over 200 remote communities in Canada, and they all, not all, well, they're mostly exclusively diesel-powered communities. So when I think of this project and offsetting 25%, and I think of the context of over 200 communities, reducing, if you can hit 25% reduction in diesel, it's a massive opportunity for Canada to look at. And we're pretty excited to be part of it for sure. And the last thing I'll say on, as we look at these projects, partnerships are key. On the right side there in the middle is the Chief Bruce Charlie, who signed the EPA with us. To his right is ATCO's Wayne Stensby. This was back in 2018 when we signed the EPA. And the gentleman holding the mic, that was then Councillor and now current Chief Dana Tija Tran. The partnership that we established with them really, there's a EPA contract in place. We are partners, but we really look at it as a relationship. That was a key part of getting this project done, and it really is going to be the key to the projects in these communities. As Dr. Ross from Yukon University tells me, if you've been to one northern community, you've been to one northern community. So it's a new conversation. It's a lot of work on the collaboration part with the community, but it really is the only way that we can move these forward. Shonita, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jay. A lot there, and let me just first of all again congratulate ATCO for this very impressive work you all have done. Say to the audience, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type it in the chat. We're gonna take as many as possible, and so I'd like to start first, Jay, by perhaps talking about what I would call the human aspect of the project, right? So just talk about both from an ATCO side in terms of your co-workers, but also from the community side. Talk about that engagement process. How was it, and what was interesting to observe in terms of the human behavior, the human interaction between the sacrifice that your staff had to do, but also the sacrifice on the side of the folks in the community to make this project work. Can you comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, certainly. It was one of the tougher parts of this project for sure. Yeah, like I said, we've been in the community for a long time. We've had a great working relationship with the community and with the government for a very long time. But it's quite interesting how things change when you put a 25-year contract in front of someone.
Mm.
So there was a trust to be built and to be maintained. Really, from when the project was conceived to when that EPA, it was 5 years or so. I think our approach, our open and transparent approach to this project, really wanting to get the project in place, but looking after the community and all ratepayers at the same time, really brought the community around to realize that, okay, this is an open relationship. This is a good partnership to look at. ATCO's in this for the best of reasons, and I'm just impressed by our team, what they've done, going above and beyond to get this project done, well outside of what our responsibilities as a regulated utility is, just to ensure the success of this project has been uplifting to watch for sure.
Interesting. There are two questions here. One from Kathy Wild, very interesting one, saying that basically, do you see this as a blueprint that ATCO could use to provide, services to other jurisdictions in Canada? And then just to build on that, there's a question from Tim Q. Big effort for a small population. Can the learnings be scaled, and how?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do think this is a blueprint for other communities to look at. And I say that just, of course, the community will speak highly of the project. They're quite proud of it. Having that ownership is a big source of pride for the community and the Vantakwichin government. But we have a bit of a unique perspective now to look at it both from the community side of the IPP project, as well as our regulated utility side, to ensure that we can fit this this project into our grid and not affect rates. We do think we're actively looking in other jurisdictions, chatting with the GNWT, the government of the NWT, see what we can do to help over there. Because it is, there's tens of millions of liters of diesel that can be offset out there. I truly believe that. And sorry, the second question
was about scaling the learnings. What learnings can be scaled in terms of, this is a small community, but I'm sure there are other communities that have a larger population. So can you scale the process and the project from this community to bigger communities across, not just, your territory, but other parts of Canada more generally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it could definitely be scaled up. I know there's a number of projects in different jurisdictions that are looking at the economic reconciliation of the Indigenous communities and the growth of the renewables. I think, for us, we have different avenues to share these learnings. Between Electricity Canada, we have an off-grid utility association that we just had a conference with to share learnings. I think that is one of the most important parts really going forward, is just being able to attend things like today and share these, and hopefully it can grow from that and go into these other communities, no matter what their size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to expand the conversation beyond Canada and just think more globally, because you have an audience here from different parts of the world. With a lot of rural communities around the world, and the need for addressing, some of the climate challenges we're facing. We have COP26, 27 coming up in Egypt. What would you say could be one key lesson that the world could take out of this kind of a collaborative project in terms of scaling up energy access in other parts of the world? One or two key lessons you would sort of share with others to say, hey, this is something you want to pay attention to if you want to talk about scaling up electrification in your country or in your community?
It's a good question, and I think one of the grassroots, again, being a community champion project, I think that's terribly important. The energy literacy in the communities, building that up a bit. We have a organization here in Canada, the Indigenous Clean Energy folks. They have a Catalyst 2020 program, and it really takes people from the Indigenous communities and builds up their literacy and empowers them to tackle these projects. And this is one of those projects. So I think when you have that grassroots knowledge in the community, you have a community champion that needs to push these projects. Mm-hmm. And we have, I think utilities are there. I think governments want to get this done. Of course, there's a lot of hurdles and bureaucracy that needs to be cleared by regulators and by governments. But if the community is going to push for the project, that's going to be the loudest voice, in my opinion, at the table.
I like the point you bring up regarding energy literacy. I think it's a big issue, not just for isolated communities, but even people living in urban communities need to sort of spend more time understanding, becoming more energy literate, just given where the world is when it comes to the energy crisis we're facing. Let's talk a little bit about maintenance and operations. Obviously, you have, given the geographical location, I was just wondering, are you going to use maybe remote monitoring systems to help with the maintenance, or are you building technical expertise in the community to manage the project? How are you going to manage operation and maintenance over time?
That's a good question. As it's fairly new, I guess first and foremost, we do have, since the beginning of us being in Oak Grove, we've always had community operators that have worked with us in our power plant, and they'll continue to do that. The more technical side, really, we do monitor everything remotely, for sure. The more technical aspects I find to be a bit challenging for the community to tackle to date. That doesn't mean that it can't shift and can't move down the road, but it's still something that we will bringing in our technicians into the community to tackle any of that ongoing maintenance and replacements in coordination with the community, of course.
You talk about the technical aspect. There's a question here from Mark Malky. Basically, he's coming to the issue of the microgrid controller, who owns it, and or who owns the, I guess, intellectual property behind it, and how is that knowledge available to be learned by others who may want to apply this sort of a project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So the microgrid controller is owned by us. It becomes part of the power system. Like any other control system, it has to coordinate with our power plant control system, which is one of the big challenges that for these projects. I guess the knowledge or learning behind them, it's something that we are working on. We'd be happy to share knowledge or the learnings that we have. I would liken it back to how we've operated our system all this time before renewables. The power plant has a control system with it that's operated and maintained by us to date. Not too many people have been interested in how it works, as long as the lights stay on. But yeah, happy to share, because really this is about growing this opportunity to those isolated communities out there.
So this question I've been thinking about in the context of ATCO, and just want to get your thoughts on it. So you guys, you're present in isolated communities in Canada. You're in Australia, I guess. You also, took on the task through LUMA to do work in Puerto Rico. What is it in ATCO's culture that seems to have you all always wanting to go where nobody wants to go, if I should say it that way? What is in your sort of a history that it's making this sort of I would call it some degree of risk-taking, where you seem to go where few want to go? What is it about you guys that make you do it?
Yeah, sometimes I wish I knew that answer too. I guess we have a great group of people that not only like to be challenged, but we like to help, and especially in the communities that we are in. And if we see where we can help, even though it may not be easy, we're up for challenges, and we really want to make the world a better place. I don't say that flippantly. I know that is my personal belief, and that of many of my coworkers and other executives. We're up for challenges for sure, and we have great support out there in our folks that really want to be along on this journey with us.
Yeah, Jay, I know that I received a couple of months ago a huge booklet from Nancy Sorton, your chairman, I guess, and it was about your 75th anniversary, and I was going through the book in sort of a preparation for this. I saw a lot of interesting things that kind of speaks to what you just said in terms of the heritage that has been around, helping other communities. Do you think because of that long-term heritage, it's easier for you all to venture out because the way ATCO has evolved for the last 75 years is almost like in your DNA? Do you think that helps in terms of you all just doing these things without perhaps thinking about the impact as opposed to the risk? Because oftentimes people spend more time worrying about the risk. But in the case of ATCO, you seem to just get in there and do it based on what I read in that book that I got from Nancy. So you think it's a sort of a ATCO DNA where you guys just do it?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've learned over my career. It does keep me interested. It keeps me attracted to the job. The challenge, but when you see in that book that ATCO it's a family business, started very, very humble beginnings. It's very much still a family business. It's a big corporation, international, but in all corners of the company, I see that as having those family values still, you're still able to see it. And it trickles down and it attracts people that are interested or attracted to those same values, those family-based values. I know the group I work with in the North is very much like a family. And yeah, it seems to trickle down and get to each corner of the company around the world.
So we got about 10 minutes left, and I know we have a hard stop at 11. I want to talk a little bit about the regulatory, sort of aspect of things here. And I know you talked about, the rate, rate design, and you talk about the, keeping rates sort of a flat, not having things go up. Talk about that process of working with regulators. What were some of the key takeaways in terms of what made things go smoothly, and what could you have done differently in terms of how the regulatory process evolved for this project?
Well, and to be clear, we haven't been before the regulator for this project yet, but we've just that collaborative work that we've done with Yukon government for quite a while. in helping to develop the IPP policy, just so it's clear. And it wasn't just us. There's another utility in the Yukon Energy, the Crown Corp. We were both at the table to work on that policy, realizing that it has to work for the utilities, to make it work for the communities, and to make it work for the Yukon as a whole. So I think it was well received at that time. Just our assistance in working with that at that table to get that IPP policy developed. We also turned our attention a little more towards the regulator. There's no doubt in my mind that the utility board wants to make these projects work also. But the Utility Act does not give any credit or, it does not weigh the environmental outcomes of projects. It's simply a financial based model. So the economic outputs of each project, and that is it. That is what they're confined to. And they've flagged that concern themselves. So working with the government to put a ordering council together, which is a direction to the utility board, just how the utilities are going to interact with this project, gave us comfort, gave us some the risk mitigation on the utility side, and really just to pass those benefits on to the community and to make sure the project worked. We do have that comfort, but we still are yet, we're looking, it'll be interesting when we are before the utility board, because it'll be under a prudency review like any other project would be.
Yeah. I just want to go back to this issue when I brought up ATCO being in Puerto Rico, now in other communities and in Australia and elsewhere. How do you capture lessons learned from these different jurisdictions where you function? Is there a mechanism where your best practices from the isolated communities you work, the folks working in Puerto Rico, do you all get together whenever, once a year, instead of saying, what are the lessons being learned across the world that can be integrated in a broader ATCO family? Is that something you all do, and how does that process work?
Yeah, we of course we haven't been meeting as much as in the last 2 years, of course, but yes, we do. We get we have ATCO 1 conference, so all corners of ATCO come together, and these interesting projects could get discussed, because it is a big organization. It has many business arms, and there's so many exciting projects out there. So it is very tough for me to keep up with what's happening in Australia, for example. So that's one avenue. We have an annual ATCO 1 conference where each business comes together and highlights some of the projects and items that they're working on. And then from there, we just rely on our folks to reach out if there's something of interest and lessons to be learned. Again, everybody's pretty accommodating and wanting to share their information for sure. Just on the electric side and the electricity team that I'm a part of, yes, we have some regular conversations and conferences that we get together with to try and get these learnings across the board. And like I said, one is the challenges, the lessons learned, and some of them are the what not to do, but they're good sharings to be had.
Yeah. 2 last quick questions, I'm not sure if it's quick response, but one has to do with the broader Canada. I mean, you showed the map with those 200 communities, other isolated communities across Canada. What has been the support or interest from the national government in terms of this project and similar projects, and what kind of support? I know you said that support from Canada, but can you talk more broadly about the kind of support you've received from the national government for these kinds of projects?
It has been quite refreshing. It's been an excellent reception from Canada They are the funding agencies. I would say it's fair to say they've, through this process, they also had their lessons learned. As you saw on the one slide, there's a number of different agencies that contribute to Canada's off-diesel program, as well as GHG reductions. So they've definitely had lessons learned, and they've been so open to communicating and collaborating with us. So it's interesting because their financial support is directly with the communities. So we're not involved in that part. It's for the communities project, but we are the technical experts and we are empowering these projects. So we've built up a great level of trust and some open lines of communication with them to date. I think they have some comfort in what we do. We have some clarity in what they do, and it's been working real well across the north.
Yeah, so there is a comment here, but I'm not sure if some of you might be able to respond to regarding what happened in Puerto Rico in terms of the damage of the hurricanes. I'm not sure that's something you might be able to comment on. Just asking if any damages that were done and any upgrades to the system. But if you cannot comment, I respect that because you're not working in that territory. So.
Yeah, I know just a little bit. I'm not connected with Puerto Rico, but just internally, right? We reach out to support our employees. It's a difficult time for all Puerto Ricans, and of course anybody that has to work through that. It's a heavy load. So we're definitely supporting our folks as they work to build that grid up and make it more resilient to these events. It's been a long haul. I know that. I've talked to two individuals that I worked with here and now work down there. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's been rewarding for sure for them. I'm sure they have a lot of hard work in front of them, and I wish all of Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans the best.
So Jay, let me get the last question to you, and that's a little bit more of a personal reflection. So when you look back, having worked on this project and the work you're doing now, what gives you a sense of satisfaction, and what would you like to do more of in terms of getting even more satisfaction from the work you do? So the past project, what was the big satisfaction? And then looking forward, what else do you think you want to spend more time doing that would garner even more sense of sort of a satisfaction in terms of contributing to society, so to speak?
That is a great question. And the first thing that pops in my mind when I think about the project that I'm most proud of is the resulting pride of the community in this project. You saw the project is it's in the middle of the community. It's right beside the airfield. They see it every day. They own it. They're able to supply themselves with electricity in the summer, and it's been a big source of pride for them. And that definitely makes me feel well that I had a part in making that work. Our team did a lot of hard work to get there for sure, but it really is the end goal for that community, the success story for the community that I appreciate. That's the first thing that popped in my mind.
Okay, and what's next for your team in terms of other projects? Anything else you want to sort of give us a foretaste of in terms of what you might be working on over the next couple of months or years?
Yeah, certainly. Like I said, so we have 3 other isolated communities in the Yukon. We should have the projects, the communities have been working on them for a number of years. Funding is in place, projects are designed. Of course, we have supply chain issues like everybody else in front of us. But looking forward to having those projects up and running. And I guess, the one thing I would change or help with, or if I could wave a magic wand of some sort, you know, we have our side of the project. We are the utility, and the community stands up their team, their project team, to get the work done there. And it would just be something that I would like to be able to help the community more with on that side. You know, there is a lot of work to do on both sides of the project. We definitely help where we can. But if we were able to help in a more holistic manner, I think these projects would be, we could get them up and running in a pretty timely manner.
Well, Jay, it's 11 o'clock, and thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations again to the entire ATCO family for this project, and I hope to hear from you again, and hope we'll have you back here in the near future to talk about some of the ongoing projects. So thank you and congratulations once again for being a finalist.
Yeah, no, certainly. Thanks everyone for attending today, and thanks for allowing me to share the community story.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.